You know what most people get wrong about success? They think it's about motivation. They think it's about waiting for that perfect wave of inspiration to hit, and then they'll get to work. But the truth is this: motivation is unreliable. Discipline is what changes your life, your weave. Grind mode isn't about working until you collapse. It's not about burning yourself out to prove a point. It's about turning effort into a lifestyle. It's about showing up on the days when you don't feel like it. It's about becoming the kind of person who does the work whether or not the mood shows up to support them. Think about it. Everybody gets excited at the beginning. Starting is easy, but how many people can keep going when it's boring, when it's inconvenient, when it feels like nothing is happening? That's what separates the dreamers from the doers. Grind mode is not glamorous. It looks like staying up an extra hour when you'd rather scroll. It looks like saying a no to distractions because your future deserves a yes. It looks like stacking small, consistent wins until people start calling you a lucky, not realizing you've been quietly building when no one was watching. Here's the secret. Once you enter grind mode, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, do I feel like it? Feel like it. And you start saying, this is who I am now. And when you align your identity with your actions, momentum takes over. Suddenly, it's not about forcing yourself. It's about becoming unstoppable. So ask yourself, are you waiting for life to hand you the perfect conditions? Hence, or are you ready to flip the switch, get into grind mode and build the life you say you want? Because the truth is, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to do it for you. But if you commit, if you decide today that you're done playing small, grind mode will carry you through every obstacle, every doubt, every excuse. The grind doesn't just build results, it builds you. Motivation is temporary, discipline is permanent. That's a truth most people struggle with because they want to believe they'll always feel inspired, that they'll always wake up with energy, ready to chase their goals. But let's be real. Motivation is like the weather. It comes and goes. Some days it shines on you and you feel unstoppable. Other days it disappears and you're left in the cold waiting for it to return. If you build your life around motivation, you'll spend half your time stuck, waiting for the right mood, the right feeling, or the right spark. That's why so many people start strong but fade quickly. They never learn to rely on anything beyond that initial burst of inspiration. Discipline, on the other hand, is a completely different game. Discipline doesn't care about your mood, your energy level, or your excuses. It's up gears. It's not about how you feel in the moment. It's about the promises you've made to yourself. Discipline shows up every single day, even when you don't want to. It's the alarm clock at 6 a.m. that you don't snooze. It's the workout you commit to even when your body says, not today. It's the studying, the writing, the practice, the grind that you do without applause or immediate payoff. Discipline is the silent engine behind every person who achieves something extraordinary. The reason discipline beats motivation every time is simple. Discipline creates momentum, and momentum creates results. Think of motivation like a match. It can light a fire, but it burns out quickly. Discipline is the wood you keep adding to the fire, so it never goes out. If you rely only on motivation, your fire dies as soon as the spark fades. But with discipline, the fire stays alive, even on the darkest days. That's when people start to notice. That's when opportunities find you, not because you got lucky, but because you were still there, still consistent, still building when others had already quit. The truth is, you will not always feel like it. You will not always wake up ready to work. You will not always feel inspired, but discipline means you don't have to. Discipline means you can act independently of your emotions. You can take steps forward even when your feelings scream for comfort. That's power. That's control. That's control. Because while motivation makes you feel good for a moment, discipline builds a life you can feel proud of for decades. Ask yourself this: how many times have you said, I'll do it when I feel ready? How many dreams have you postponed because you were waiting for motivation to return? Waiting doesn't get you closer. It only delays the person you could already be becoming. Discipline removes the waiting. Discipline says, it doesn't matter if I'm tired. It doesn't matter if I'm not in the mood. I'm going to take this step today because this is the person I've chosen to be. That choice made daily becomes your identity. You stop being someone who tries. You start being someone who does. And once you live from that place, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not chasing results. You're embodying the habits that naturally create them. You're not waiting for motivation to push you. You're pulling yourself forward with consistency. You're not controlled by how you feel. You're driven by who you are. Discipline doesn't just get you closer to your goals. It rewires you into a person who is capable of achieving them and sustaining them and sustaining them. So the next time you don't feel like it, remember this. Feelings are temporary. They shift, they fade, they come and go. But the actions you take in spite of those feelings, they stack up. They build muscle, skill, confidence, and credibility with yourself. That's why discipline is permanent. It creates something real, something lasting, something you can stand on when motivation has left the room. Motivation might get you started, but discipline is the reason you'll finish. Grind mode is consistency, not burnout. Too often, people confuse working hard with working endlessly, pushing themselves past exhaustion as if collapsing at the end of the day is some badge of honor. But the truth is, burning out isn't proof of progress, it's proof of imbalance. The grind isn't about draining yourself until there's nothing left. It's about creating a rhythm that you can sustain, a way of showing up every day with steady focus. Consistency is the quiet power that gets you further than any one sprint of effort ever could. Think about it. Anyone can go all out for a week. Anyone can lock in for a short burst of energy and produce results in the moment. But what separates those who succeed long-term from those who fizzle out is the ability to keep going at a pace that doesn't break them. Consistency is about building habits that fit into your life in a way that allows them to stay there. It's about stacking small, repeatable wins that, over time, add up to something massive. You don't need to crush yourself. You just need to show up again and again. The problem is many people confuse intensity with commitment. They think grinding means working until their eyes bleed, sacrificing every part of their life until nothing is left but work. But that's not grinding, that's self-destruction. Real grind mode is disciplined consistency. It's understanding that success is a marathon, not a sprint, and the person who paces themselves intelligently will always outlast the one who explodes out of the gate, only to collapse halfway through. The key is not to push yourself until you break, but to push yourself until showing up becomes who you are. Consistency, when you break it down, is about trust. It's about teaching yourself that you can rely on your own word, that when you say you're going to do something, you follow through. Ooh. Every time you stay consistent, you reinforce that trust with yourself. And the more trust you build, the stronger your foundation becomes. That's when momentum takes over, not because you forced it through exhaustion, but because you nurtured it through repetition. When it doesn't, they assume something's wrong, when in reality, that's just the process. Think of all the unfinished projects that live in drawers, in laptops, in notebooks. Great ideas that never saw daylight, not because they weren't good enough, but because someone stopped too soon. The gap between starting and finishing is filled with discomfort, boredom, repetition, and doubt. And the only way across that gap is persistence. That's why finishing is so powerful. It's proof that you endured all of that and kept moving forward anyway. The beauty of finishing is that it doesn't just give you the result. It gives you something deeper. It builds your identity. Every time you finish what you start, you strengthen the belief that you're someone who follows through. That belief is priceless. It gives you the confidence to tackle bigger challenges because you know you have the resilience to carry them to completion. Starting gives you excitement, but finishing gives you self-respect. And here's the thing, finishing doesn't always mean doing it perfectly. Sometimes it just means you stayed until the end. You completed the course, you published the book, you launched the project. Even if it wasn't flawless, you finished. And finishing once makes it easier to finish again. It teaches you that you don't need perfection to succeed. You need persistence. Starting is for everyone. Finishing is for the few who are willing to endure the less glamorous side of growth. It's easy to be a beginner, full of hope and adrenaline. But to be a finisher, you have to dig deeper. You have to push through the silence, the doubt, the monotony, and keep your eyes on the end goal. That's why finishers stand out. They've done what most people walked away from. So the question isn't, can you start? Because of course you can. The real question is, can you finish? So can you finish? Can you stay the course when the shine wears off? Can you keep grinding when it's no longer new? When the work gets tough? When nobody's watching? If you can, you put yourself in a rare category. And in that category, you don't just dream, you deliver. Grind mode thrives in the unseen. The most powerful work you'll ever do is the work no one claps for. No one notices. No one celebrates. It's the early mornings when the world is asleep and you're putting in quiet hours. It's the late nights when no one's watching and you're still chipping away at your craft. It's those moments when you could choose comfort, but you choose commitment instead. That's where the grind truly lives. In the silence, in the shadows, in the spaces where applause doesn't exist. The truth is, everyone loves recognition. We're wired to crave approval, to want the likes, the praise, the validation. But if your grind depends on someone noticing, you'll never last. Because the reality is, no one's paying attention in the beginning. People don't cheer when you're practicing alone. They don't celebrate the hours you spend learning, refining, failing, and trying again. The unseen grind doesn't get attention until it's already paid off. By then, the world calls it success. But before that moment, it's invisible. This is why so many people quit. They mistake invisibility for failure. They think that because no one is noticing their effort, it must not be working. They don't realize that the unseen grind is where the foundation is laid. Think about it. A building takes months of groundwork before anyone sees it rise above the surface. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But underground, the structure is being fortified, made strong enough to support what's coming. Your grind works the same way. Your grind works the same way. The unseen grind builds discipline. It builds patience. It builds resilience. It's the training you do when nobody's watching that makes you sharp enough to perform when the spotlight finally hits. If you only show up for applause, you'll crumble under pressure because you never built the character that comes from the hidden hours. But when you've done the unseen work, the spotlight becomes easy. It's just a continuation of what you've been doing all along. Grind mode thrives in the unseen because it's pure. There's no audience to impress, no applause to chase, no validation to wait for. It's just you and the commitment you've made to yourself. And when you can hold yourself accountable in private, when you can be proud of what you're doing even when no one knows about it, that's when you become unstoppable. You're no longer performing for others, you're transforming for yourself. This is where true mastery is born. Mastery is born. The athlete who trains after practice is over. The artist who sketches in silence. The entrepreneur who works on their vision when everyone else is distracted. These are the people who rise. Not because they shouted the loudest about their grind, but because they invested in it quietly, consistently, relentlessly. They built their strength in private so that when the public moment arrived, it wasn't luck, it wasn't chance, it was proof of unseen effort. The grind is not glamorous, and that's the point. It strips away ego and forces you to rely on nothing but your own consistency. You learn to keep going without immediate reward. You learn to delay gratification. You learn to fall in love with the process itself instead of the outcome. And that shift changes everything, because when you can love the unseen work, you'll never be dependent on validation again. You'll grind because it's who you are, not because of what you get. Eventually, the unseen becomes undeniable. People will look at your results and call you a lucky or a gifted, not realizing that every breakthrough they see was built on countless hours they never did. And that's okay. You don't need them to see it. You need you to know it because you were there. You lived those hours for us. You paid the price when no one was watching, and now you can collect the reward when everyone finally notices. So if you're grinding and it feels like no one cares, good. That's the sign you're in the right place. That's where greatness is built. Let others chase recognition while you chase growth. Grind mode thrives in the unseen, and when your moment comes, the world will only see the surface, but you'll know what it really took to build it. Don't ask, do I feel like it? Say, this is who I am. That one shift changes everything. Most people let their feelings run the show. Oh. If they feel tired, they skip the workout. If they feel uninspired, they don't write. If they feel unmotivated, they put off the work until tomorrow. Feelings are unreliable. They're fleeting. They come and go, often with no explanation. And if you build your life on them, you'll always be inconsistent. You'll always be at the mercy of your moods. Identity is different. Identity is who you decide you are, regardless of how you feel in the moment. When you stop asking whether you're in the mood and start acting from identity, you no longer need motivation to push you forward. You don't go to the gym because you feel like it. You go because you're someone who trains. You don't work on your project because inspiration struck. You work because you're someone who finishes what they start. The power is in shifting from is sometimes to when I feel like it is just me. Think about it. A professional doesn't say, do I feel like showing up today? Why? They show up because their role demands it, because their identity is tied to the work. A doctor doesn't wake up and say, I'll go see my patients if I'm in the mood. They go because that's who they are. A parent doesn't say, I'll take care of my kid when I feel like it. They show up day in and day out because their identity is tied to being a parent. When you connect your actions to your identity, you stop relying on temporary feelings and start relying on permanent values. The problem is that many people say they want change, but they never adopt a new identity. They still see themselves as someone who tries, someone who dabbles, someone who might get it done if the stars align. But real transformation happens when you say, I'm no longer that person. I'm not trying to be disciplined. I am disciplined. I'm not trying to be consistent. I am consistent. I'm not trying to win. I'm a winner who trains like one every day. That identity is powerful because it leaves no room for negotiation. When you ask, do I feel like it? You leave the door open for excuses. But when you say, this is who I am, you close the door. You stop debating with yourself. You stop giving energy to the argument of whether or not you'll show up. The decision has already been made. That's what discipline feels like. Not forcing yourself endlessly, but eliminating the option of quitting because it doesn't align with who you are anymore. This shift is not about perfection. It's not about never missing a step. It's about alignment. When your actions line up with your identity, even when you stumble, you return to the path because that's your default. That's the difference between someone who tries and someone who becomes. Trying is temporary. Becoming is permanent. The beauty of acting from identity is that it also builds confidence. Every time you act in alignment with who you say you are, you reinforce that belief. Each rep, each hour of practice, each moment of consistency becomes proof that your identity is real. Quote. And over time, you stop even questioning whether you can do it. You just do it. It becomes automatic. So the next time you face resistance, the next time your mind starts whispering, I don't feel like it, remind yourself, feelings don't define you. Identity does. You don't need to be in the mood. You don't need a surge of motivation. You need clarity about who you are. And once that's clear, the action becomes obvious. You don't need to argue with yourself because the argument is already won. This is the power of grind mode. It's not about chasing feelings. It's about embodying identity. When you stop being the person who acts only when inspired and start being the person who acts because that's who you are, your consistency multiplies, your results compound, and your life transforms. Because at that point, success is no longer something you're reaching for. It's simply a reflection of who you've chosen to be. Momentum comes from action, not waiting. Too many people sit around waiting for the perfect spark to appear before they start. They tell themselves, once I feel ready, I'll go all in. But readiness is a myth. Waiting doesn't create clarity, and it doesn't create energy. Action does. The smallest step forward generates more power than sitting still, even if that step feels insignificant at first. Because once you move, you create motion, and once you create motion, you build momentum. Momentum is like a snowball. At the top of the hill, it's tiny and fragile. If you stare at it too long, it feels pointless to push. It looks like it will never amount to anything. Let float. But the moment you give it a shove, it begins rolling. Slowly at first, maybe even awkwardly. But with each turn, it gathers speed. It collects weight. It grows larger. Before long, it's unstoppable. That's exactly how momentum works in your life. You don't wait for it to show up. You create it by moving, by starting, by doing something right now, no matter how small. The mistake most people make is believing they need motivation to act. They sit around waiting for inspiration, hoping that one day they'll wake up with enough fire in their belly to finally move. But motivation isn't the cause of action. It's the effect. You feel motivated because you've already started doing something, not the other way around. Think about it. How many times have you dreaded a task, but once you began, you felt a surge of energy and wanted to keep going? That's momentum. It shows up when you act, not when you wait. Momentum also has a compounding effect. The first step feels heavy, but the second feels easier. The third is lighter still. By the time you've taken 5, 10, 20 steps, you're no longer forcing yourself. You're being pulled forward by the rhythm you've created. Action builds confidence, and confidence fuels more action. That cycle is what separates those who move ahead from those who stay stuck. The difference isn't talent or luck. It's the decision to start, to push past hesitation, and to let momentum carry the rest. Waiting, on the other hand, drains energy. The longer you put something off, the heavier it becomes in your mind. You start overthinking it, inflating it, turning it into a mountain that feels impossible to climb. But the moment you take the first step, the illusion shatters. You realize it wasn't as hard as you thought. You realize you were giving power to the waiting instead of to the doing. Action frees you from that weight and gives you control again. Momentum doesn't care if your steps are big or small. What matters is that they're consistent. Writing 1 page a day turns into a book. Saving a small amount each week turns into financial freedom. Practicing for 10 minutes a day turns into mastery. None of those results come from waiting until you feel inspired. They come from stacking action upon action until momentum makes the process natural. This is why discipline matters so much. You don't need to sprint every day. You don't need massive breakthroughs every week. You need to keep moving even when it feels insignificant, because one small step repeated over and over creates unstoppable motion. And once that momentum is on your side, it feels like the world bends in your favor. Opportunities appear. Confidence grows. Progress accelerates. Not because you waited for the right time, but because you created the right time through action. The truth is, momentum is your greatest ally. It makes hard things easier, heavy things lighter, and big dreams more achievable. But you only unlock it by moving forward. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need to know every detail. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start. Because once you do, momentum will meet you halfway and carry you further than you imagined. So stop waiting. Stop convincing yourself tomorrow will feel different. Tomorrow doesn't change unless you act today. Momentum doesn't come from sitting still. It comes from taking that first step, no matter how small. Do it now and let the movement you create turn into the momentum that transforms everything. Saying no to distractions means saying yes to your future. Every day, you're presented with countless choices, and most of them are disguised as harmless. Scrolling on your phone for just a few minutes, hanging out with people who don't push you forward, indulging in short-term comfort instead of long-term growth. It all feels small in the moment. But over time, those small choices steal your focus, drain your energy, and rob you of the momentum you need to build the life you want. Distractions are thieves. They don't just take your time, they take your potential. The hardest part is that distractions rarely look dangerous. They come disguised as entertainment, as a taking a break, as a just this once. And because of that, they're easy to justify. But every time you say yes to a distraction, you're also saying no to something else. You're saying no to the workout, no to the project, no to the skill you promised yourself you'd practice. You're saying no to your future self. That's the real cost. Every yes to something meaningless is a silent rejection of something meaningful. When you start looking at distractions this way, they lose their power. Suddenly, the choice isn't between watching another episode or working on your goals. It's between comfort right now or progress later. It's between who you are today and who you're trying to become. And the truth is, every future you dream of will demand sacrifices in the present. Not because sacrifice is punishment, but because focus is fuel. You can't move toward your vision if you're constantly pulled in 100 other directions. The people who achieve great things aren't always the smartest, the most talented, or the most connected. They're the ones who learned how to say no. They said no to distractions, no to drama, no to the easy path that promised quick pleasure, but stole long-term progress. They chose to guard their time like treasure because they understood it's the one resource they can never get back. Money can be regained, opportunities can come again, but time spent on distractions is gone forever. Saying no doesn't mean you never rest or never enjoy yourself. It means you rest with intention. It means you choose activities that recharge you instead of drain you. It means you spend time with people who inspire you instead of waste your energy. It means you align your daily actions with your bigger vision instead of scattering your attention on things that don't matter. Saying no becomes easier when you realize it's not about rejection. It's about redirection. Every no to distraction is a yes to clarity, to growth, to the person you want to become. Of course, this isn't easy. Distractions are designed to be addictive. Technology, social media, endless entertainment. They're built to hook your attention and keep it. That's why discipline matters. You can't rely on willpower alone because willpower fades. You need systems. You need boundaries. You need to create an environment where the default choice supports your goals instead of undermines them. That might mean turning off notifications, setting time limits, or surrounding yourself with people who hold you accountable. Whatever it takes to protect your focus, it's worth it because your future is worth it. And here's the beautiful part. Every time you say no to a distraction, you strengthen your identity. You prove to yourself that your vision matters more than temporary comfort. You build self-respect because you chose what you needed over what you wanted in the moment. Those small victories compound just like small distractions do. But instead of stealing your future, they build it. Instead of draining you, they fuel you. The truth is, the life you want is waiting on the other side of discipline. Not on the other side of doing everything, but on the other side of choosing the right things. And the only way to get there is to say no to what doesn't serve you. Because every yes to distraction is a lost opportunity. And every no to distraction is a vote for your future self. The more times you vote in favor of that future, the more inevitable it becomes. So the next time you're tempted to give in to something that doesn't move you forward, pause. Ask yourself, am I saying yes to this at the cost of saying no to my own future? If the answer is yes, then make the harder choice. Say no, protect your vision. Because the truth is, every time you choose focus over distraction, you're not just sacrificing, you're investing. You're investing in the person you're becoming, and that's the best yes you'll ever give. The grind doesn't just build results, it builds you. Most people step into the grind because they want something. The promotion, the physique, the money, the recognition. And yes, the grind will give you results if you stick with it. But the real reward isn't what you get. It's who you become in the process. The hours, the effort, the discipline, the sacrifices, they shape you into a version of yourself you could never reach by shortcuts or comfort alone. Every time you push through resistance, you strengthen more than your skills. You strengthen your character. When you choose to stay consistent on the days you don't feel like it, you're building resilience. When you commit to the process, even when the results are slow, you're building patience. When you keep going after setbacks, failures, and frustrations, you're building perseverance. Those qualities don't just help you reach one goal. They transform how you approach everything in life. That's why the grind is so powerful. It's training for more than the task in front of you. The grind you face in the gym teaches you discipline that spills into your career. The grind you face in building a business teaches you problem solving that improves your relationships. The grind you face in learning a skill teaches you humility and persistence that shape your mindset forever. You think you're chasing a result, but what you're really doing is sculpting a stronger, sharper, more capable version of yourself. This is why shortcuts never last. When people cheat the process, they may get temporary results, but they miss the transformation. They skip the very struggles that would have built the resilience to maintain what they achieved. That's why so many who take shortcuts end up back where they started. They got the reward without becoming the kind of person who can sustain it. The grind makes sure you earn it, not just with effort, but with growth. And growth is permanent. Once you've learned how to push through discomfort, you can apply that skill anywhere. Once you've built the habit of consistency, it follows you into every area of life. Once you've proven to yourself that you can endure, nothing intimidates you the same way again. The grind leaves marks on you, not scars of exhaustion, but signatures of strength. It's proof that you didn't just chase something, you became someone. The beautiful thing is that the grind also deepens your self-respect. When you do the work no one else sees, when you hold yourself accountable in silence, you start to believe in yourself on a different level. You stop needing validation because you know what you've endured. You know what you've overcome. That quiet confidence becomes part of who you are, and it can't be taken from you. Results can be lost, money can disappear, applause can fade, but the person you become through the grind stays with you forever. And perhaps the most important part, the grind reveals what you're truly capable of. Most people never tap into their full potential because they never push themselves long enough to find it. They quit at discomfort, they stop at the first wall, they back off when it gets hard. But when you commit to the grind, you push past those barriers and you start to see just how much more strength, creativity, and resilience you have inside you. That realization is priceless because Once you know what you're capable of, you'll never settle for less again. So yes, the grind produces results. You'll get the job, the body, the skill, the success. But the deeper truth is that the grind produces you, the disciplined you, the resilient you, the confident you, the unstoppable you. That's the real prize. That's why the grind is worth it. Because at the end of the journey, you don't just arrive at your goal. You arrive at a stronger version of yourself, and that version is prepared to take on anything that comes next. Grind mode isn't about chasing perfection, and it's not about waiting for motivation to save you. It's about discipline, consistency, and the choices you make when nobody's watching. It's about starting when it's easy and finishing when it's hard. It's about saying no to distractions so you can say yes to your future. It's about taking action, building momentum, and letting those small steps transform into unstoppable force. And above all, it's about becoming someone new in the process, someone stronger, more resilient, more capable than the person who first began. The grind will test you, it will stretch you, and it will demand more than you thought you had to give. But if you stay in it, if you push through the silence, the boredom, the setbacks, you'll discover the truth. The grind doesn't just build results, it builds you. And once you've been built by the grind, there is nothing in this world that can break you. So the question is simple. Whoa. Are you going to wait for the right moment? Or are you going to create it? Are you going to play small, or are you ready to step into grind mode and become the person your future is waiting on? The choice is yours. The work is yours. The future is yours. The future is yours.